Hi everyone, Jared here. Time for the market video update. We've got a couple of interesting things to look at. Today is a bank holiday, so the markets have been pretty flat the entire U.S. Open. A little bit of ranging, but nothing too nothing too major. So we can't really get a good look at how the equities are doing, but we can see how commodities are moving. And gold's holding on a little bit. It's up there. The big mover though is oil, and typically when we see oil make these big runs. Towards strength or weakness, that can directly affect the US dollar. And right now, oil has really been kind of hanging around the 101 to 97, $98 a barrel. And now it's up to 104. This is the highest we've seen it in a couple of months. And so I'm going to be definitely looking for this to lean to a little bit of dollar weakness. So we're probably going to see some dollar weakness on these high commodity prices. But we'll look at that in just a moment. We got lots to cover there. As far as today, once again, today's a bank holiday. We've got a little bit of news coming out of Australia, so watch out for that. That's going to be some big movement there. A little bit of New Zealand and then some more Australia stuff. So should be a decent moving day for Australia and New Zealand, but we'll see what we have coming up tomorrow as well. We have retail sales coming out of Canada, a little bit of UK news. Nothing too big on the US side of things, so we probably won't see a ton of movement there. The dollar index is not open and not moving right now, but remember, we're still looking for the dollar index. If it can hold above 79, then it should continue towards strength, but I think we're going to see this open tomorrow morning for the US Open on Tuesday and see that it's probably below 79, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on as well. Okay, so here's a couple of things to look at. We put on a long-term trade in the euro dollar last night because of a couple of reasons. I was looking at the break of this kind of multi-day high here of our Friday high, you know, the basic Friday high stuff that we look at, number one. And I was also looking at the break of this next level. We have kind of this, like I was talking about, this resistance zone here that was about 30 pips, 25, 30 pips between about 131.90 and 132.15. And we saw that the market blasted right through that pretty easily towards the open and then consolidated a little bit inside of that, and that's where we got our entry to go long on the euro dollar. And we ended up with entries between about 132.00 and 132.10, and you can see that it ran all the way up here to about 132.75, and then it started to kind of come back and consolidate. Now, once again, with some of the other signals we're getting, I'm looking for probably some continued dollar weakness as the day and as the next couple of days go on. We have lots of Greek news coming out, and they're starting to sound really positive and optimistic about all of that. I'm tired of looking and hearing about and talking about Greece, so we'll just kind of try to play the levels on this euro dollar and see what we can do here. Now, as you can see, I've got this trend line drawn in here, and this is the last couple of days, and the market's been kind of bumping up this. And definitely holding pretty strong. We've got a little bit of a gap here that's going to need to be filled at some point. I'm sure we'll see that happen maybe towards the end of the week. But here's something interesting the euro dollar is doing is that it's made a nice big run up kind of from the bottom of these channels. It's still within a channel, and here's these highs right here. We have a little short-term double top that goes over about a 2-week period, which is about 132.75, and that's exactly where the euro stopped. It went up 132.75 to about 132.80, 85 even, and the euro stopped there and came off that by a pretty good little amount, and that's some of these highs here. Now we still have some highs to address here about 132.20 or 133.20, and this is still an area to be watched out for and ready for. But I think if the euro can kind of stay below this consolidation area, if we start to get much of a break, then this pair is probably headed quite a bit down. But like I said, I think we've got just a little bit more dollar weakness in the works here. Now, when we look at the long-term time frame, we see that the euro dollar is just kind of in the upper half of the channel here. We see that this pair has been coming down very nicely, and we're not really into much of a trend reversal yet. We've been staying below the I think this is the 100-day moving average. We've been staying below that, and it's starting to looks like it might want to test that and push higher. Like I said in my notes last night, I think the euro may try to test this 13400 area, but that still keeps it in a downtrend. That just means it's kind of testing these trend channels and trend walls and so on. So if we get a test of 13400, 134.50 even, we're still not in a major uptrend until we start to see breaks of those levels. We probably have to break about 13500 before we're really in an official uptrend. So there's room for the euro to kind of continue up and test these levels before coming back down if it's going to do so. And I think we still do have we obviously still have the longer term downtrend in play, but But that's what we're going to keep an eye on. So coming into this afternoon with some of the Asian session movement and so on, I think we can probably look at this little trend line right here. You can see it on the 5-minute chart, on the 15-minute chart, and so on. If we get a little break of this guy, I think we might start to see some activity towards the downside. So look at this 5-minute chart, and you can see that we've got that trend line right there. And if this thing starts to break, I think we may need to get below this low here, which is about 10 pips away from current market price. And this little swing point right here is around 132.30, 30.31. If we get a break of this, again, which is only about 10 pips away, then I think we're going to have a 15 to 20 pip run down. And likewise, if that does hold, then I'm going to be looking at this little trend line right here and seeing if we can get a little break of this guy. Again, just for a short Asian session kind of movement. And we're going to be looking for some breaks of about 132.45, 46, right in that general area. We're just kind of right in the middle of this channel here. So getting above. Actually, let me revise that. I would say 132.50. Just to make sure we're above this guy. 132.50 at the top, 132.30 at the bottom for a breakout on the euro dollar. So that's what we're going to be looking at there. Okay, that's a lot of time spent on the euro dollar, but there's a lot of things going on there, and we've got our long-term trade, and everything's looking really great. Pound dollar, same thing. Here's our pound dollar. If we look at the longer time frame here, we see that I can even expand, probably move up this trend line just a little bit, our trend channel. But I think this is probably pretty accurate for the moment. We're staying nicely below the moving average. I'm not going to be surprised to see the pound dollar kind of double top here and double top on that moving average and kind of towards those highs. Look at this trend line right here. This big trend line broke on the pound dollar and it ran down a whole bunch, and now it's running back up. And remember, it's not uncommon to get a double top once there's been a double top or a double bottom once there's been a breakout. And with this breakout right here, we're kind of seeing this double top in the works. We've got a lot of resistance right here, and again we have kind of a resistance channel, which is where I have these dotted lines, and it's about a 30 pip resistance channel between 158.50 and about 158.85, and we can see that the pound really had a trouble getting to that, bounced off that, and then it got into it, and it's still back below it. So this could very likely start to be some double top, triple top area, and some ability for the pair to continue down, and I'm definitely watching for some of that to happen. So we see that in the works. As far as trend lines, we don't really have too many trend lines because this has been a very sharp, very kind of quick run up. But we do see that we've got some kind of lows here that we could break, and that's about 158.40. If the pound starts to get below this 158.40, I think we're going to have a quick run down of anywhere from 15 to 25 pips on the continuation side. Now, if it decides it's going to really make a run at testing these upper areas, then that's where we can look at some of the kind of choppier channels here. But still, we've got on the 1 and the 5-minute charts, we can see that we've got some trend lines that are kind of along these lines right here. That will be very interesting to watch and see how that goes. And if we see some breaks of these trend lines, around the 158.50 area probably, then with some stops below these swing points, we might be able to see a little bit of a run up of about 20 pips. So just watch this little sharp trend line. It's a really sharp little son of a gun. So keep an eye on that with stops below this area, and we should be able to see some continuations on that. So watch this low, a break of this low part of the channel, and a break of this descending trend line. Going to skip over the yen pairs. We're not too into those ones for the moment. Here is our Aussie dollar, and this Aussie dollar is looking pretty interesting. We've got a very, very kind of formed trend line here, and it's really having a hard time making it above some of these highs here. I think there's good reason to believe if gold really starts to move, there's good reason to believe this Aussie might make a move as well. But I'm starting to really pay a lot of attention to this area right here, and I think there's a long-term trade for sure as we break through some of these lows, and that's obviously 100 pips away or so. I think there's a long-term trade on the break there, but I also think there's a kind of long-term trade or even a short-term trade as we start to just break this trend line and get down into kind of this. Remember our trade as we came into Friday, we grabbed some very nice pips on this thing and took it down into about these lows here of about 10700, 10690, and I think some breaks of this 10700 area once again will probably take us down into that low, and there's probably 50 or 60 pips to be had in there. But in the meantime, it's going to be very choppy, and we've got to be very careful. So I don't know if I'm going to be looking for any kind of buy opportunities just yet. We've got some trend lines to keep an eye on, but I think we've got some slightly longer term runs here, and I'll be posting those details in the chat. But I'm really looking for kind of the larger run to break this trend line and start making its way back down once again. And last but not least, gold. I've got my little dotted line here to remind me that if gold makes a really significant break of this level, it's probably headed back into the highs here. So here's kind of this area that gold's been bouncing around, and it's about 1735, 36, right in that area. And if it makes a significant break there, I think we're headed into 1760 and potentially beyond. But I think that could just be a nice little double top area for a bigger continuation down. But once again, when we look at this daily chart right here, we see that gold's made a break. It double topped here, and it's made a break, and it's just kind of, it's still much lower than that little double top, and it still is very, very well below that ascending trend line. So I think gold might have a bit of a run to the downside left in it still. We've got this trend line right here, and it's tried to kind of crawl above that, but very unconvincingly. So I think we might start to see some further downside there. And if we see that, that's definitely going to be a big signal to start going short on the Aussie dollar, as well as looking for some of these downward movements on the euro dollar and pound dollar. So we're looking for that. We'll see if we can grab a couple of pips out of the Asian session this afternoon, and we'll have some updates on our long-term trades as well as more pending orders coming into the U.S. sessions. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you in the chat.